We're joined by Sasha Mostafa, who is the third prize winner of the Tower Poetry Competition 2024. Congratulations, Sasha.
Thank you.
So to start off, maybe I could ask you how you came to poetry.
So I only started writing poetry kind of seriously and often when I was about 15. And the poetic form that I first got really into was slam poetry. And I was really, really big into that and watched hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos and kind of youth speaks competitions. And I wrote a lot of slam poetry, spoken word poetry. And then I went on a creative writing residential and talked to some kind of working, living poets, and they said, well, have you tried kind of just keeping it on the page? And I was like, no. So then I started kind of focusing more on that and reading a lot of like ordinary poetry, kind of broad-ranging stuff, and yeah, I just stuck at it and been doing it ever since.
Were there any poets who were a particular influence at that point, or at different stages of your journey?
I kind of tend to jump between poets I'm obsessed with, and then I just steal a little bit of technique from each one. And the first poet that I can remember being really, really into was Caroline Duffy, and I read like everything she wrote, and I was obsessed with her. And then I love Ted Hughes as well. Mark Pajak is a modern poet that I really, really like. And I do a lot of browsing of the Poetry Foundation and just read a lot of, relatively obscure stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Can I ask about how this poem, your prize-winning poem, came together or came about?
Yeah, so I struggled with the theme at first, like really, really struggled. I thought, what am I doing with this? And then I kind of had the thought of, I was talking to somebody that I know, and the poem is about him, and his memory is like really, really good. And it kind of made me think about when you tell someone something, like you share a story or an experience or a fact about yourself, like that facet of yourself that you've shared returns because that person knows that about you. And so every conversation you ever have, every interaction you have with that person, they'll have that in their head that that's a personality trait that you have, or that's an experience that you've had. And so I think it's kind of beautiful that no part of you is ever really lost, because everybody around you is constantly reminding you of who you are and reflecting that back at you. And so that's what the poem is about, the beauty that I've found in that.
And what was the process of writing? Was it quite a long writing process, or did it come together quite quickly?
I worked to deadlines, so I really, really properly worked to this deadline. And it was not very long. It was like 2 or 3 days, I think, before the deadline that I submitted it. And because I struggled with the theme so much, I just kept putting it off, and had all these ideas racketing around, but couldn't get anything down on paper. And then 3 days before the deadline, I was like, right, I do it now or I don't do it. So I just sat down, thought and wrote. And usually kind of what I like to do with poems is write them, maybe do a little bit of really big editing right after I write it, leave it fester for a couple of days, and then come back to it, edit. And that's kind of what I did, and then I sent it off literally right before the deadline.
Well, at this point, maybe we could ask you to read your poem.
Yeah. So my poem is called Photographic Memory. We're important, so he reflects. Dates, coffee orders. He spells out each sentence of each undertaking, each serrated need, each limb flung back. A morning glance. I stare ahead at my real eyes, his echo. I tell him to forget the white nights, the moon shivering in her silky fog, Vernix K. Sosa for our sharp, silent painting. Forget the sun everywhere, peeling away from the inside of my mouth. Forget what we won at, forget what crimped into soggy remembrance, like Monday rain, touch we through to the corner. Forget retreat and emergence, like wet seals searching for the snugness of air. forget my skin forgetting, suiting otherness, his brand new matter, ghosts here and here and here. I tell him to root on this side of the glass. Lovers stems from touch of hands, not the formulae of lines upon them. To forget our shapes, to enjoy only our colourful wants, Tengujo calendars, tonight ringing, flicking like a warm sparrow.